Class is basically done. Class of 25 is done. Let's get into the class of 2026.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black. I'm the editor of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Network. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are here with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Win or lose, visit FanDuel.com to get started. On today's show, we're going to get into the class of 2026. I'm going to give you 4 names of guys I think are must-get for Boston College. I'll explain who those guys are. They're critical recruits. I'll explain where they're at with all of them. And additionally, we'll end the show with some scheduling news, as it looks like BC has an open spot on their schedule now. I'll explain what happened and who I think might fill that spot. That will be on the last segment of today's show. But let's jump off right now. So the class of 2025 is basically done. You have London Seymour. He is committed. He has taken his official visit in the last 3 weeks. He's a defensive tackle from Atlanta, Georgia, who is Richard Seymour's son. He's coming. He's going to sign late. He'll be here. After that, it looks like the class of 25 is complete. Additionally, Monday is the starter classes at Boston College. And if you know how BC works for transfers, the starter class basically is the end of transfer portal season for BC. Now, I want to make sure you understand that there are still some names that haven't popped up yet. There is a punter from Yale. There is a special teams long snapper that have not announced yet. I think we'll be able to talk about both of them on Monday. And then additionally, there's another silent commit who is going to be able to play. And I'll give you more hints on that later. So those are the last 3. There was no more surprises. There's no more visitors this weekend. That's it. So you have your transfer class. That means all the effort, all the news moving forward is going to be next year's recruiting class, the class of 2026. That's what Bill O'Brien and what I talked about yesterday. It's going to be a very important class for Boston College because you had, you were behind the 8 ball last year. You started late. You had to get official visitors on campus at when you've only had control of the program for like 3 or 4 months. Now you have a full year ahead of you. You've been able to work with these kids. You've had most of the names. I have a whole list of 26 recruits in 2026 that you might want to watch for on Eagle Insider. It's worth the price of admission if you want to look at it right now. But I'm giving you a few of them today. I'm giving you a little taste. But these kids, almost all of them, have had a relationship with BC, and the 4 that I'm going to give you have been connected to BC for a while. And so those are the ones I'm going to start with. Now, let's start with the offense, and we'll start with quarterback because I think it's important to note, if you've not been kind of following along, the BC has a quarterback already in the class of 2026. That is Corinne Berry out of Oaks. I think it's Oaks Charter, California. He had a huge junior season. He's not my must-have because we already have him, but I'm really excited to see what he can do because I think he is he's really going to add something to your quarterback room, and he has high-level ceiling. But the reason I'm bringing up the quarterback is BC is not done at quarterback in the class of 26. They're going to be going for 2. And there's been some names that have been bandied about, and I have a few on there. But the name that I think you should all be watching for that I know is high on BC's list is Femi Babalola, a 6'3" quarterback out of Ravenwood, Tennessee. Now, he's more of the under the radar type quarterback. He doesn't have a huge offer list. He has a couple G5s and like Ivy League, so he's a smart kid, obviously, if like Penn's offering him. But he's got good size. He's going to be going into a senior year, I think, as the presumptive starter at high school. He didn't start it doesn't like looking at stats. I don't think he started the entire year. He threw for about 1,700 yards during his junior year, but he's been on campus. He was on campus in November. One of the wins that BC had at home. I forget which one it was. He was there, and I'm I'm sure he is their top quarterback that they're looking for, that quarterback slot number 2. Now, if you trust Jonathan DiBiase, the quarterback's coach, and Will Long and Bill O'Brien, they've been able to identify quarterbacks that fit their system. You had Shaker Reisig, Corinne Berry, and the thought is Femi Babalola would be the third one. So where is BC at with him? I think BC's in great shape. They got in early. He's got good size. He's got a good arm. He's got some mobility to him. And he's not like Thomas Castellanos mobility, but like he can move. I think that's an important thing for you guys all to recognize too. Like you see it with Grayson James. BC is not adverse to getting quarterbacks that can move. They don't want, I think what they don't want is like what Castellanos kind of does, right? Which is all he can do is move. You want guys that can throw the ball. You want guys that can move with their arms. Grayson James is a perfect example. I think his mold is more what you're looking for in the quarterbacks moving forward. And I think Babalola fits that as well. So he's one big name. And I think BC's in great shape there. When they get to official visit season, I wouldn't be surprised if he takes an OV here. And he will be someone I think that is important. The second name is a name we've talked about here on this podcast. Of local recruiting is huge at Boston College. It's something that is important and critical that they get the right guys, because they're not going to just locally recruit everybody. You can't build a roster at Boston College off of just Massachusetts guys. It just doesn't happen that way. You would have a pretty bad team if all you did was, if you took like half of your roster and made it Mass kids. But you selectively get the guys that you want and you get them here. And this second guy is, I think, as critical as any local kid that they've already got, and that's Marky Walbridge out of St. Sebastian's. He's a 4-star offensive tackle, huge offer list. He's a 4-star. If you use the 247 composite scale, which is a good industry gauge, he's a 4-star. He's like right on the edge of a 4-star on 247. So he could eventually bump. I think he's like an 89, so he'd be right there. But he's got offers from everywhere, from Tennessee to Rutgers to Syracuse to some Big Ten schools, West Virginia. Like they're all there. And BC has worked really hard to build a relationship with him. At one point, I thought that BC might go in a different direction. They have 3 offensive linemen already. They have 2 interior offensive linemen and 2 tackles. So they have, and 1 tackle, excuse me. So they have Braden Beckenhuis, Deke Rooksnitis, and their other tackle is Marcelino Antunes from Catholic Memorial. They're building a big offensive line class. As you guys have probably, if you follow this team, your biggest concern moving forward is the depth at offensive line. And that's a fair gauge, right? Like you've seen classes just not bring the depth that you're hoping for. This class is going to be very different. This class is already off to being very different. If you have 3 kids already, it's, January 10th. That's a good sign, because if you look at my list on 247, half of it is offensive linemen. So they're going big here. They're going to be going there's a specific emphasis this year on the lines and the depth of the trenches, which, is the key to winning football. You have a good offensive line, you have a good defensive line. That is going to help you win. And so getting someone like Marky Walbridge would be another, this would be, I'm a big Marcelino Antunes. I'm a big fan of all these guys. Braden Beckenhuis, this kid's an all-state wrestler, right? Marky Walbridge is almost a blue chip recruit. This is a critical recruit here. And I don't want to use like Drew Kendall and Ozzie Trapillo as like examples, but this is that kind of level, right? Like he's not exploded to the point where you're just never going to get him. Someone like Hardy Watts, I thought BC, it was nice if they could get him, but I thought he was a reach. I think Marky Walbridge is in their wheelhouse. I think he's someone they could get. And obviously, we want to get 4-stars here. We want to get high recruits. He hits all those. He's been on campus. He's done visits. He was here for the barbecue last year. He is an important, critical component to this class, and one we're going to have to watch moving forward, because I know he's going to be important moving forward. Now, in our second segment, I got 2 more names. Let's look at some defensive names that you may want to watch for. We'll get into all of that in just a moment. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Are you tired of the endless waiting, wondering, and worrying about your taxes? Well, now that's a thing of the past. You see, taxes don't have to be complicated or stressful. TurboTax is here to change the game by matching you with a TurboTax expert who can get you to work on your taxes right away. No more waiting for answers. No more wondering if you're missing out on deductions. Whether you've got one form or 20, TurboTax experts give you taxes their undivided attention while you get real-time updates on their progress. So you can focus on what really matters. You won't have to lift a finger, but you'll get the peace of mind knowing that your taxes are being handled by the pros. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to turbotax.com today and get yourself matched with your expert who's ready to take your taxes to your plate off your plate so you can focus on your day. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service, real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at turbotax.com/guarantees. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black, and I'm giving you 4 names. I gave you 2 on the offensive side of the ball. I got a whole bunch more on you for an Eagle Insider, but I'm going to give you 2 defensive. But when you're done with this episode, I want to thank each and every one of you who have made Locked On Boston College your first listen every day. And when you're done with this episode, go check out Locked On College Football. With that exciting Notre Dame win over Penn State last night, you're going to want to hear what Spencer McLaughlin has to say about all that. Go check it out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Now, as I mentioned, the trenches are huge for Boston College. It's a majority of what my big board was looking at, and I think it's going to be a point of emphasis. And I love that. I love that is a critical area because it really is. You hit last year in 2025 really hard on running backs. You have 2 really good ones with Bo McCormick and Mekhi Dodd. You hit hard on defensive backs. You brought in like 9. Now it's a chance to dig deep into the spot that makes teams winners, which is the offense and defensive line. Now, the defensive line already has one commitment, and that's Mac Fitzgerald, son of Craig Fitzgerald, the strength and conditioning coach. He played at Catholic Memorial. First year there, had 10 sacks this last year. And according to Mac, who has his stats, he had 40 tackles for loss, which is good. That's huge. Stats are hard to find. He was talking to me about it. That's what he was saying. That's great. Like that's a good defensive end. But there's other names out there too that they're looking at. One name I'm really interested in is CJ Edwards out of Bergen Catholic in New Jersey. I'm a big fan of New Jersey. For recruits, I love the kids that come out of that state. And CJ Edwards is he's no slouch either. This is a kid with a humongous offer list. He's found a lot of suitors in the transfer portal. I mean, in the recruiting class, including Minnesota and Michigan. He has 9 offers. He does not have a rating yet. And I'm not hung up on that on 247 yet because the 2026 kids, it takes a little while for them to get their ratings. Okay. Getting good offers is like a big indicator in my brain of kids that are going to get higher ratings. So, and he's got 9 offers, so not huge, but not bad either. But what my reason is, A, he's a good player. B, I want more in at Bergen Catholic. That's a great school to get involved in. He has a all-world teammate, Jordan Thomas, who is a cornerback who is also a target at BC, who is the highest rated recruit I believe BC is targeting. He has like offers everywhere. So he's more of a reach. I'm not going to put him on a critical list. Obviously I'd love to see him get to BC. But he's more of a reach. Edwards, I think, is more realistic. Defensive edge, he's got good size, 6'4". He's been on campus at least twice, I believe. I think he came this spring and then game this fall. So he's got a good relationship with the staff. Which again is the critical factor in recruiting. You could talk about academics, you could talk about NIL, you could talk about anything. It's the relationships that matter the most. Bill O'Brien says that when he talks about recruiting. BC is not a school that is going to go out and flaunt NIL bags at kids. So if you hear of a recruit that's saying, set me up financially is a big thing for me, you may not be the best fit for BC. But if you hear recruits saying, I loved meeting with, Tim Lewis and Bill O'Brien. And I feel like those guys have my best interest in heart. Those are the guys that are going to end up at, as a strong candidate at Boston College. And I feel like CJ Edwards might fall on that list. He, as I said, they have an edge already, but they need more. This is a position that is going to need depth. And I would say 2 to 3 probably is a reasonable expectation at the edge rusher position, because they're going to need to continue to build. They got 2 last year, Jaden Fry and Israel Oladapopu. Both are coming, I believe, over the summer. Or no, Jaden Fry is coming early. But you brought in Anya Noisi in the transfer portal and Favor Bates, but you need to continue to build. This is a position where if you have more guys, not a bad thing to have. And I think the cupboard was kind of bare when you got here. You didn't have a ton of talent after Donovan Azaraku and Neto Akpala left. You had Quintavious Hutchins and Josiah Griffin, but you need to get some depth there. And I think CJ Edwards right down the street at Bergen Catholic is a really good one. Now, the second name is from Pennsylvania. It's Tavian Branch, who's a 6'3", 285 defensive lineman. He's been recruited both on the offense and defensive line across the country, but I'm pretty sure Boston College is looking for him on the defensive line. He's the size where you could thin him out, put him on the edge, or make him bigger and put him inside. Like, you could put 15 pounds on him and make him a defensive tackle, or you can get him, muscled and outside as an edge. Not sure where they would go with it, but I like him because he's, again, another recruit. Seen a lot of this with the guys that we were looking at, who has a lot of interest from schools that BC can battle against. Penn State has looked at him. They're looking at him, I believe, on the offensive line. Phil Trotwaite. Actually, they're looking at him on the defensive line. Excuse me. Kentucky, Rutgers, Syracuse, Temple, Virginia Tech. BC is not looking like they're afraid to go after some of these schools. And with a good first year under Bill O'Brien, I know it was 7-6, but there's stuff to build on there. And I think a guy like Tavian Branch, who doesn't have a rating yet, but again, looking at the offers that he has, he's going to have a decent rating when it comes out. I think he's going to be important. And I wouldn't be surprised if they get him on campus early. Remember, for January is a month where at the end of the month they can have visitors. And I know guys there's a few guys that I talked to that are already planning their trips to BC. It's going to happen. And so they do it then. They could do it during spring practice, and they could do it for officials in June. That's the month where everything goes crazy, and you better get your VIP access to Eagle Insider, because you're not going to want to miss it then. But Tavian Branch is someone I'm very interested in. I think this is a kid that could be a late riser that gets a lot of interest. But again, another body for your defensive line, another big name that could anchor and get you in Pennsylvania. I don't think that BC landed anyone from I might be missing one out, but it doesn't remind me of any recruits that they landed last year. So getting in Pennsylvania again, I like Pennsylvania. Penn State clearly owns that state. It's hard to get in there. Pitt's also doing a pretty good job, but getting your fair share from Pennsylvania is not the worst thing in the world. I mean, BC has the history there, right? Matt Ryan. You want to be able to get into that state and get some recruits too. So that's why I like Tavian Branch there. Now, in our final segment, let's get into get out of recruiting for a little bit. Hopefully you like that little taste that we have here. If you want more, come over to my website and check out some of the work that we have there. It's going to be going crazy in a couple of weeks. So if you want to get updates, come over to Eagle Insider. But I want to get into scheduling, because the class of 2020, the class of 2020, the 2025 schedule is not complete yet. And there's still I think there's going to be a big hole in it from what you think. And there's probably going to be an answer pretty quickly too. I'll explain what I mean by all that in just a moment. Oop. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better here at FanDuel. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Now, I've been telling you about Zay Flowers anytime touchdowns. He's not going to play on Saturday. So give me Derrick Henry anytime touchdowns. That's a good one. Probably not the best odds per se, but I think it's going to happen. I'm expecting a Derrick Henry game. Maybe go for Derrick Henry 2 touchdowns. That's an offer you can get on there. That might be even better one to look at. So you go over to FanDuel and check that out. So visit the website and check it out. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black here. And when you're done with today's episode, check out Locked On ACC. With Carson Beck potentially heading to the Miami Hurricanes, that's going to be some real big talk by Alex Dono, I'm sure. And I'm sure Kenton Gibbs has his perspective on all that. Check that out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, many of you've been asking me like, AJ, when is the schedule coming out? When are we going to find out? I got plans to make. And I'm right there with you. You want to know right away, for me, I like to know what my fall is going to look like. And I like looking at, analyzing the schedule. Now, past schedules have dictated that the ACC will release their final schedule at the end of January. I believe last year it was almost like the last day of January that we got it. So don't expect for Boston College to know where they're going to be playing until the end of that month. Now, if you've been following along on the news, one big thing that's popped up is UMass is heading to the MAC next year. They finally found their conference, and good for them. That's a good move for them. I think it's going to give them some stability. Hopefully, this turn in the MAC will be better than the last turn. But they, in change, have to now put together a 19. I think it's an 8-game conference schedule, and move around some other games. Now, they have some big bye games in there that they're not going to get rid of, that are going to be automatic losses. I think they play Georgia next year, but they're going to get paid well for that. So one team that is going to get moved off their schedule, I believe, is Boston College. I think it's already happened. I believe they already have a scheduled game, the date that they're supposed to play BC. If you go to fbsschedules.com, that site knows everything. And they have UMass's schedule up, and there's already a game scheduled where BC is. And so I don't think BC is going to change their schedule for UMass. I don't think they're going to find a new spot to put them in. I think they're going to be off their schedule. And who is going to get moved in that spot? If you look at who has spots available, there's one team that has a glaring spot. It makes a ton of sense, and that is the University of Connecticut Huskies. Jim Moore's team, I think, just won 9 games. Had a great season. They didn't play anybody, so but they beat UNC in the Fenway Bowl. So credit to them. They did have a nice win to end the season. And believe me, they're not a bad team anymore. They've done a nice job. Moore has done a nice job of building this program up. We saw it 3 years ago now, when Jeff Affley lost to UMass in 2022 in stores. This is going to be a home game, I imagine. I can't imagine BC is going to give up a home game that they had scheduled because they want to schedule UConn. So I'm guessing a home again. Could be a 1 game. We don't know. We don't know what it is. And it hasn't been confirmed yet, but I think this is what's going to happen. I think we'll probably hear about it soon. BC last played UConn in 2023 at home. That was one of those games that Hafley almost lost. BC won pretty. It was a close game, but BC was in control for most of that. Part of me worries because we have not seen a letdown game yet, and UConn is not bad. And this is going to be a big game for them. Jim Moore, who's been crying all off season about the transfer portal. He's a good coach, and he's got that program heading in the right direction. But it would be a nice win too. You're basically switching out Western Kentucky from last year, a bowl eligible team, for UConn, another bowl eligible team. I think they both had the same amount of wins too, if I remember correctly. So that has not been announced yet, but I expect that to happen. And if it happens, it's going to probably be an October game. I think UMass was going to be in September. This game is going to be like a mid-October game. So just be prepared. That probably is what's going to be coming down the line. I also, am looking towards the ACC schedule, and that should be coming at the end of this month. So it's going to be a busy couple weeks. Recruiting is going to be taking off. I'm telling you, folks, we'll be having lots of talks about that. On Monday's episode, BC and Syracuse are going to play this weekend. Are they going to give us something worth talking about? We'll talk about that. Hockey's back. Recruiting. Hopefully, I can give you the new transfer portal name. Again, I don't want to just spoil a kid's moment, but hopefully I'll be able to give that to you on Monday's show. We'll have a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. We're the only the only daily Boston College podcast. I'm the man crazy enough to do it. I'm AJ Black of Eagle Insider, and I love doing this every single day, getting you all the Boston College sports news and analysis that you need. We have great guests. We have great shows. Make sure to hit like and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure to check us out every day at Locked On Boston College, your team every